It was a crisp autumn evening at Camp Kidney, and the usual sounds of crickets and rustling trees were missing. In their place, an unnerving silence spread through the camp, leaving a chill that seemed to settle deep into the bones of every camper. Lazlo, Raj, and Clam were huddled near the campfire, the orange glow casting strange shadows on their faces. Lazlo, ever the optimist, tried to lighten the mood. It's just a quiet night. We'll be fine. Raj, though, was visibly unsettled. He shifted his eyes toward the woods. Did you hear that? Clam, who had been staring into the fire, looked up. What? I don't hear anything. Lazlo chuckled. It's nothing. Probably just the wind. But then it came again. A faint sound. Barely audible over the crackling of the fire, but unmistakable. It was a soft, eerie whistle, like a haunting melody carried on the wind. It wasn't like any bird call or animal noise the boys had ever heard. It seemed alive, as if calling to them. Okay, that's creepy, Raj said, his voice tense. I swear that came from the woods. Clam's face twisted in confusion. Why does it feel like it's calling to us? Lazlo stood, brushing off his discomfort. It's probably one of the counselors pulling a prank. Don't worry about it. But even as he said the words, a gnawing feeling settled into his stomach. The whistle sounded again, this time closer, as though it were beckoning them. The three boys shared an uneasy glance before standing up, grabbing their flashlights and walking toward the trees. They moved cautiously, the cold air pressing against them as if wanting them to turn back. With every step, the whistle grew louder, filling their ears with a strange sense of dread. It wasn't just a sound. It felt like something was pulling them, urging them deeper into the woods. The trees seemed to close in around them, branches twisting like hands trying to catch them. The wind whispered through the leaves. But it wasn't the usual sound of nature. It was as if the trees were speaking, warning them, or maybe calling them into the depths. Suddenly, the whistle stopped. Everything went silent, as if the forest held its breath. The three campers stood frozen, waiting, and then, through the mist, they saw him. The figure was tall and thin, standing in the distance at the edge of the forest. It was a man, but not quite human. His skin was a sickly gray, stretched too tightly over his bones. His eyes were dark, hollow sockets, and his face was a frozen mask of agony, twisted in a grotesque grimace. The figure raised a bony hand and pointed directly at them. Director Grimshaw? Lazlo whispered, though he could barely bring himself to say the name. The figure didn't move, its eyes fixed on them, its mouth opening with a horrible, otherworldly hiss.
Come closer.
The whistle sounded again, louder and clearer, coming from somewhere deep within the forest. Though it now seemed to echo in their minds, the campers instinctively took a step back, but the figure did not budge. Instead, it gestured toward the ground. There, half buried in the dirt, lay a brass whistle, gleaming eerily in the pale moonlight.
Destroy it.
The figure rasps, his voice like the scraping of metal.
Free me.
Lazlo, Raj, and Clam stared at the whistle in horror. They understood what they had to do. It was the key to ending the curse that had haunted Camp Kidney for decades. But just as Lazlo reached for the whistle, the ground trembled beneath them. The forest seemed to come alive. The trees shifted and groaning, as though they were part of something much darker. The figure of Director Grimshaw began to twitch, his body twisting unnaturally, his limbs elongating as though he were being pulled apart. The air grew colder, the whistle's song now a maddening screech. "We have to destroy it now," Raj shouted, his voice full of terror. Laszlo grabbed the whistle, his hand shaking as he raised it high. With one swift motion, he slammed it against a nearby rock. The forest exploded with a deafening wail. The trees began to shake violently, their roots twisting out of the ground. The ground cracked open, and the whispers grew louder. Screaming voices, begging, pleading. For a moment, everything stopped. The figure of Grimshaw let out a final, horrifying scream as it dissolved into the darkness, leaving nothing but the lingering echo of its whistle. The trees stood still. The air lightened. The forest calmed. The campers stood in the clearing, panting heavily, with their eyes wide with fear. They could still hear the faint echo of the whistle in the distance, but it was fading, growing weaker. The curse had been broken, but at what cost? They turned to leave, but as they walked away, Laszlo caught a glimpse of something, a shadow fitting through the trees. He stopped, looking back into the dark woods, but there was nothing. Still, he felt as if the forest was watching them. "It's over," Raj said, though his voice betrayed the doubt lingering in his mind. "It has to be." Clam nodded, but didn't say anything. The three of them didn't speak as they walked back to the camp. They'd broken the curse, but as they left the forest behind, Laszlo couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't truly escaped. Somewhere, deep in the woods, the whisper still lingered, waiting for the next camper to hear its call.